Cool. So thanks everyone for joining Atten's Lunch Hour. Today we'll be diving a little bit into information surrounding the Drupal upgrades and what that means for your organization. So a little bit about myself, I'm Casey Minner, and I'm a project manager here at Atten. I've been with Atten for about 3 years now, and I'm really looking forward to discussing all things Drupal upgrades with you.
Awesome. Hey, Casey. Casey, I haven't seen you in person in like 1.5 years, so we're trying to figure out how to communicate in person again. I'm Joel Steidel. I'm the Director of Engineering here at Atten. I've been with the team for about 12 years now, and I'm really excited about giving you some guidance on these Drupal updates.
Joel, good to see you.
Thanks.
So let's dive into why we are here today. So today we'll be covering what end of life means and what the relevant dates are. What does the Drupal 8 to 9 upgrade look like? What your options are for an upgrade from D7 and next steps you and your organization can take. So let's start with a little bit of an icebreaker poll. When you make tacos yourself, this is a point of contention between Joel and I, do you put the cheese on the top or on the bottom before any other toppings so that the cheese melts properly?
It is contentious, but we all know that top will win by a landslide.
Debatable. Let's see.
All right, we're dying to know what the results are.
83% said top, 17% said bottom.
Landslide.
I want everyone that said top to go ahead and switch up your life next time you make tacos and then report back. Cool. So let's get into maybe a little bit more of a relevant poll for why we're here today. What version of Drupal is your website currently using?
And I realize, some of you have multiple sites on multiple versions of Drupal, so not a problem. You can just pick what's most relevant to you for this talk.
All right, we have 61% on D7, 28% on D8, 11% on D9, and 0 on other.
Awesome. I think that aligns well with the webinar today. Definitely the most information around Drupal 7. So hang on, we'll get there.
Great. So now we'll dive into a little bit of Q&A between Joel and myself that will hopefully answer a lot of your questions. However, if we do not answer any of your questions, please ask anything within the chat box or the Q&A box. So Joel, what dates should we be aware of? I know we have some, when we say end of life, that can sound kind of morbid. So let's talk about some more specifics.
All right, cool. So let's chat dates and then we'll jump into the whole end of life thing. So pre-pandemic, Drupal 7 and Drupal 8 both had their end of life set for November 2021. And when the pandemic hit, things really changed with a lot of organizations. There's still a ton of Drupal 7 sites out there, and the Drupal Association really realized that budgets were slashed across the board for many organizations and wanted to do something about it. And they actually extended Drupal 7's end of life by an entire year. So that's why that date is now November 28th, 2022. Drupal 8 is relatively easier to upgrade. We'll talk about that here in a second. But one thing that kept that date the same, 2021, is because one of the main frameworks Drupal 8 is built with is Symfony, and Symfony 3 has an end of life of November 2021. So with the relative ease and that end of life for Symfony 3, that's why that date is not shifting.
Okay.
And real quickly, end of life. So let's jump in there. Yeah, it sounds a bit morbid, but it simply means that the software is no longer going to receive updates or attention. And while this might be fine for a while, ultimately it will become more insecure over time, and that will leave your website vulnerable.
Okay, good to know. So for my clients that are on Drupal 8, what's my message to them? I remember when we did a lot of those D7 to D8 upgrades, they were fairly massive projects. So what does this upgrade look like from D8 to D9?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. They were massive projects. But I think you've got good news for clients that are currently on Drupal 8. It's just so much more relatively easy compared to past updates. And for a little bit of context, we work on a lot, Atten works on a lot of large scale web projects. And so when we first started taking on D7 to D8 migrations back in 2015, those could run anywhere from 500 to 2,000 hours. And so far, most of our Drupal 8 to Drupal 9 upgrades have fallen anywhere from like 4 to 60 hours. And a lot of factors that weigh in are like how many contributed modules. You'll hear me say Drupal contributed modules a lot today, and those are simply the modules that are contributed by the community. And some of the factors of complexity really come down to how much custom code you have on the site, and then whether or not those contributed modules have a clear upgrade path to Drupal 9. Like, has someone already made them Drupal 9 compatible? And moving to Drupal 8 was promised to be the last, I'll put it in air quotes, the last major upgrade. And so far that seems to be true, which is great. So that means once you're on Drupal 9, the upgrade path to Drupal 10 will be relatively easy as well.
Okay, so it sounds obviously very specific to each individual site. So how do you go about determining how difficult this specific upgrade will be?
Yeah, so
I'm sorry to interrupt. I've got somebody saying that the audio is just having a little trouble with the audio. Mind moving that microphone a little bit closer? Thank you. Sorry.
No worries. Is this better?
I can hear you just fine, but RD, if you're still having trouble, let us know.
Great. Yeah, just keep us posted.
All right, great. So to answer that, Casey, it is very specific for each site. We recommend a module was created called upgrade status. This module can be installed like any other contributed module on your current Drupal 8 site. So the process we've been taking to figure out how complex an upgrade to Drupal 9 is to first install this module. And it gives you a report of all the other modules you have installed and whether or not a Drupal 9 version already exists. If it doesn't, that of course means that you'll need to stop using that module if you want to get a Drupal 9, or come up with some other workaround. And then it will also tell you what needs to be done to your custom code that you have. A lot of times it's fairly simple changes that need to be made, but we'll basically take what upgrade status is telling us and create a line item list of everything that needs to be done, and then estimate around that. And like I said, that has shaken out in like the 4 to 60 hour range, depending on how complex the site has been. And of course, we can, if you don't have anyone technical on your staff to install this module and work through that, that's something Atten can absolutely help you with.
That's great. Awesome. So we've gone over a lot so far, and Joel and I have been talking. So we want to take a couple minutes to see if anyone has any questions so far. So if you do have any questions, feel free to drop those in the chat or the Q&A chat box. We'll give everyone a couple minutes here. Joe, if you could just keep us posted.
Sure. I mean, there's a question in the chat box right now, if you want to take it. Is if the migration's after October, will we need to upgrade directly from Drupal 7 to Drupal 9?
Say that again.
Sure. So if the migration project is going to happen after October of this year, will we need to upgrade directly from Drupal 7 to Drupal 9?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? And skip Drupal 8, is that
That's right.
the essence of the question? Okay, so yeah, I would definitely, if you're migrating now, I would go straight, even today, I would go straight to Drupal 9. That will just save you some effort. You know, we've got roughly 6 months until end of life for Drupal 8. So there's really, Drupal 9's been out for a while now and is stable. I would just we're moving clients straight from Drupal 7 to Drupal 9 and skipping Drupal 8. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, good question.
Would you like to take another question? But there's more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure. All right, so we've got, oh, I just moved my window, of course. So 1 second, let me find it. So are there any steps or items in the upgrade that can also be done or included now to help future-proof upgrades beyond what's being discussed here?
Yeah, that's a
so
good.
Is there anything that you can do now? Yeah.
Yeah, good question. So specifically around the Drupal 8 to Drupal 9 upgrade, one thing for the pretty much since the beginning of Drupal 8, if you were writing any custom code or even contributed modules, if you were using certain Drupal APIs, it would tell you if that particular API would be deprecated or removed in Drupal 9. And I'm assuming the same is going to happen. So if you're looking at documentation on Drupal.org, you will see notices of code that will be deprecated for Drupal 10. And so one thing that we try and do as a company is just stay on top of code we know that's going to be removed. And rather than waiting until we need to move a client to Drupal 10, along the way, we start removing those deprecations. Or better yet, if you know a certain piece of code is going to be removed in a future version, don't use it. Drupal.org is fairly good about recommending the alternative that you should use rather than the deprecated option. And that's just a great way to future-proof things. Another thing that I would note is usually more popular contributed modules are going to be the first ones to become compatible with a newer version of Drupal. So if you're using something that's maybe only installed on a few sites, it's possible that it won't get the attention necessary.
Awesome. There's a question in the chat. There's a couple of questions in the chat. If you want to answer them now or if you want to take them later.
We have some more information to cover as it relates more to D7. So let's jump into those and then we can hit these other questions at the end.
Yeah, great questions though, and keep those coming, and we'll try and get to all of those before the end of our webinar today.
Okay, and also Joel, project. The New Yorker here is telling you to project.
Awesome. All right, so we've talked a lot about D8 and D9, so let's jump into what the story is for those clients that we have that are currently on D7.
Yeah, so Casey, that's not nearly as simple as if you were on Drupal 8 today. So there's a bunch of options that you could go with. I'm going to cover 3 good options today, and that's moving to Drupal 9. We'll talk about using the Drupal 7 vendor extended support and what that really means. And then we'll talk about an option of moving to Backdrop CMS. you could, of course, you could, of course, move to a CMS like WordPress, or you could move to a more of a static site approach like Gatsby. I mean, there are a ton of options, but we'll focus on 3 today just to keep things a bit more focused. So moving to Drupal 9 is likely going to be your most complex option. It will require a full rebuild. There are some automated migration tools that are built in the Drupal core that help a lot. Those really focus on getting your content moved over though. So if you have custom code or a custom theme, those will need to be rewritten completely to be compatible with Drupal 9. And one huge advantage of going to Drupal 9 is future upgrades should be much simpler, as I mentioned, and then you get to take advantage of all the new innovation and features that have happened since Drupal 7.
Great.
All right, so option 2, the Drupal 7 vendor extended support. So details of this program are a little bit fuzzy, but I'll try to explain what it really means. It will likely work a bit like it did for Drupal 6. Essentially, approved vendors like Lullabot is one company that I know is already part of this program, have committed to helping keep Drupal 7 secure for years to come. So these vendors will create security updates for Drupal 7, and part of their contract is to make those security updates available to the public for free. And I think we can expect the process of applying those updates to your Drupal 7 site will look largely like it does today. So when a new version of Drupal 7 is released, we all go get that new version and we apply those updates. And I think we can assume that process will be very similar in the future.
Okay.
So this is likely the simplest option for your Drupal 7 site, but I think it has some pretty big caveats along with it. Like one, I want to start by pointing out that Drupal 7 currently does not run on PHP 8, which is the most recent version of PHP.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. It's likely that Drupal 7 will become PHP 8 compatible. And I'll just back up for a second. PHP is the programming language that Drupal's written in. PHP 7 has an end of life of November 2022 as well. And I've seen there's some movement to make Drupal 7 PHP 8 compatible, and I'm sure it will happen. But that doesn't mean that all contributed modules and custom code will be PHP 8 compatible. So that's like another hurdle if you go this approach that you'll have to look out for in the future. And then, I think the obvious, eventually the like extended support or the vendor extended support will just cease completely. I'm not aware of a date. I was looking for a specific date for that, and I haven't seen one. We can assume it will be several years out in the future, but you're kind of kicking the can down the road with this approach, in my opinion, and kind of setting yourself up for some technical debt along the way. And what I mean by that is like you're going to have to deal with the PHP version. So anyway, that's that option. So option 3, you can move to Backdrop CMS. So if you're unfamiliar with Backdrop CMS, it's a fork or a modified version of Drupal 7. And it's several years old at this point. I don't have the exact date of when that shifted. It was definitely kind of during the Drupal 8 development. Some some people thought like Drupal 8 was maybe not going in the right direction for everybody, and they wanted to just create a different option for people, and that's Backdrop CMS. So just a couple bullet points about Backdrop. Backdrop has a built-in upgrade path for Drupal 7. And Backdrop will be familiar to people with Drupal experience because it's so similar. But it has numerous usability improvements and additional features. So there's momentum with Backdrop where I would say there's not with Drupal 7.
Okay.
Backdrop CMS will prioritize backward compatibility with Drupal 7 until at least 2024. And a large selection of like popular Drupal 7 modules have already become compatible with Backdrop CMS.
Okay.
And so that backwards compatibility is a big selling point, I think. It's also worth mentioning that Backdrop's taken a lot of initiative to modernize some of the code that was outdated with Drupal 7. So just rewriting some of the code to be more object oriented and whatnot. The last point I'd like to make is Backdrop CMS has its own security team, and for at least the time being, they work closely with the Drupal security team. So you've got folks with eyes on the code, making sure that you're not going to be left with a vulnerable website.
Great. So that's a lot of information. Thanks, Joel. So ultimately, at the end of the day, what do you recommend?
Yeah, and again, I'll give you a super non-committal answer to that, and I think it really depends. I think if you're having a hard time deciding, Adam would be happy to be a sounding board for you, to help you make that decision. If you have technical staff that wants some extra support, we can help provide that as well. You can see I've got
Potato.
Do you have, I think Potato wants to tell us.
She's more interested in the tacos.
I think, yeah, she wants the cheese on the top. So we can also, like, if you don't have any technical staff, Adam can work with you to just kind of hear you out on the investment you've made in your Drupal 7 site and like your best approach moving forward.
Cool. Awesome. Well, we'll jump into a little bit more of the Q&A here in a second, but Joel and I want to thank, and Potato, want to thank everyone for joining us. We hope that you were able to take some of this knowledge that we talked about and make an informed decision for you, your organization, and your website. So I'll hand it back over to Joe here, and we can start chatting through those remaining questions.
Yeah, there's a ton coming in, so I'm going to. So let me jump in. Can you talk about? So somebody asked. Amy had asked in the chat. Can you talk a little bit more about what it takes to upgrade from Drupal 7? Amy, I just want to make sure that if there's anything specific you want us to cover, specifically, happy to. Just want to make sure that we've responded to that. There's a question in the chat and also about is there a D7 analog for upgrade status? Which I guess means like the question would be what I assume the question is if I have a D7 site and I run upgrade status, will it tell me if there's a D8 or D9 module?
I believe so, and some of that is actually built into Drupal core. If you go through the automated like upgrade through Drupal core, so if you install Drupal 9, you can actually do an automated upgrade. That has some technical challenges. I'll just point out, like you have to have the technical know-how to like make sure your Drupal 7 database can be accessed by the Drupal 9 site. it will actually go through though and tell you a bit about like some of the modules you have installed on your Drupal 7 site and whether or not a Drupal 9 version exists. So some of that's built in the core. I don't know if the upgrade status module has a Drupal 7 version. I could, of course, maybe someone could look that up and post it in the chat.
Okay, cool. There's a question that came in. This may have been answered, but I just want to make sure that this was responded to, which is, if any of the D8 modules from my current site are not ported to support D9, the D9 latest version, by the end of D8 end of life, how do you migrate from D8 to D9?
Yeah, so I think there are a couple options. Obviously, if you have technical folks on staff, you can help create a patch for that, and a patch is simply the code changes required to get that module to be compatible. So that's one option. Another option is to see if there's a comparable module out there that does what you need it to do. And then kind of a third option that I don't recommend, but is maybe viable, is you can simply change that contributed module into one of your own custom modules and make those compatibility changes yourself, and essentially treat it as a custom module moving forward.
So, just my understanding is just with respect to D7 versus D8 is that going from D7 to D8 is like a complete rewrite of the code base, a completely new approach to writing the code, a new templating engine, the whole works, versus going from D8 to D9 where it's deprecated code that's being like there's older functions are being removed. With that, if let me ask the question is, do you see any trends where companies might change architecture when moving from D7 to D8, D9? Meaning, instead of moving 10 sites to 10 sites, are some moving to a single install for content leveraging APIs or different technologies for client sites? Yeah, so are we seeing significant architectural changes when moving from one site to the next?
That's a really great question. I would say it depends, right? Like if your needs as an organization have really shifted, it's a great opportunity to kind of reimagine. You kind of hate to move like when my parents moved like 10 years ago, they moved all the boxes that had sat in the garage for the past 20 years to their new garage. I hope my parents are listening, actually. I kind of hate to see that done. We call that moving technical debt. And I was just talking to Joe about that this morning. Like, you don't want to do that. So it's a great opportunity to really think through, like, in Drupal, maybe your content architecture has gotten a little bit unwieldy over the past 5 to 10 years, and maybe it's an opportunity to re-envision that. Then, of course, the JSON API module is in Drupal core now, in Drupal 8 and Drupal 9. And if you wanted to, maybe you have developers on staff that would like to take advantage of being able to, run a headless website where they're accessing content through APIs rather than directly through the Drupal theme. So, yeah, we've seen a bit of all of that, but I just really encourage you to not move the boxes from one site to another.
Yeah, I just want to I'm going to pile on just a little bit, because there's not just a development angle on this, but there's also sort of a business development angle on this, which is if your organization is I've been having conversations about moving from Drupal 7 to Drupal 9 or Drupal 8 for quite a while now. And there's a lot of organizations right now that are looking at this technical cliff and end of life next year and saying, well, we just need to re-platform. And what we've learned as an agency, doing what's called a lift and shift migration, meaning just grab what's there and move it from one platform to another, is it's not satisfying for stakeholders. It's not satisfying for executive sponsors, and it really doesn't save a lot of money. And so, since there is going to be an organizational need to migrate the site from Drupal 7 to elsewhere, I would recommend budgeting for a redesign alongside the re-platform. Just it's the best time to do it. It's when people are aware of the changes, and also it's again, I just don't. In our experience, the lift and shift is never truly a lift and shift. You have to fix things and update things, but also it's just not a satisfying experience, and it doesn't save a lot of money. So I would recommend redesigning in the move. Sorry for I'm getting off my soapbox now. The question about, does moving to Backdrop present any easier upgrade path from Drupal 7 to Drupal 9?
Yeah, that's a great question, Joe. I would say yes. Just so a couple things with that. Since Backdrop is a port or it's built on a modified version of Drupal 7, right? Like and they focus heavily on keeping it Drupal 7 compatible. Very timely, I converted a Drupal module yesterday to Backdrop, really to see how that would go. So a couple things. Backdrop actually took quite a few contributed modules and moved them into core. So for example, a lot of the most popular modules, their theory is like, hey, like 9 out of 10 times people are installing these on their Drupal site. Let's not make them go search for these. Let's just add that functionality into core. So there's a list of that. If you do a Google search for like Backdrop Drupal modules in core or something like that, you'll find that listing that shows you all of those. Getting back to the question at hand, it is simpler. There's a module that you can use called Coder Upgrade. So if you search Backdrop Coder Upgrade, it will actually do conversions of modules for you. It's not perfect. So for example, if you have a custom module or a contributed module that has not been converted to Backdrop, it will attempt to do it for you. So I actually used that module yesterday, and I would say it got 90% right for me. So it was a huge benefit. And within a couple hours, I was up and running on that module that I converted.
Awesome. Another question about custom modules. How hard is it to upgrade a custom module on our own?
Okay, so for that, I'm going to have to assume that's Drupal 8 to Drupal 9. That's the context I have.
I think this is a Drupal 7 to Drupal 8 custom change.
Yeah, so
context on the person asking the question.
Yeah, maybe we can get some context there in the chat. That's from Jinka.
Yeah, D7 to D8.
D7 to D8. So great. That really depends a lot on what it is. A lot of times, APIs between Drupal 7 and Drupal 8 have changed quite a bit outside of, if you were doing some fairly simple form alters, maybe those could stay similar. But it's really case by case. For example, if you were like implementing hook menu, that's changed completely to like the controller system in Drupal 8 and Drupal 9, and that would have to be rewritten completely. So yeah, there's no simple answer there. I'm not sure. I've never personally used like an automated. I don't know if there's anything like Coder Upgrade for D7 to D8. Someone in the chat may know the answer to that, but you can look around for that.
Yeah. It's. I know the least satisfying answer in development is it depends, but in this instance, it really depends on how much what APIs and custom code and deprecated functions are being used. Could you address the issues involved in dealing with views in a D7 to D9 upgrade?
Yeah, great question. So unless something has changed, I've always considered views as something you just have to recreate. So views, of course, was a very popular module in Drupal 7. In Drupal 8, it became part of Drupal core. So anyway, that's a little background there that I've always just considered when I'm like estimating out an upgrade from Drupal 7 to Drupal 8 or 9 that I'm gonna have to just recreate all those views by hand. Again, there may be something out there at this point, right? It's a ever shifting landscape of what tools are available for that, but I'm not aware of anything at this point that automates that completely.
Yeah, I'd be interested. I mean, I'd be interested in the people who are on the call right now. Like, who's? I mean, this is it's a little informal. It's too late to put a poll together, but I'd be interested in knowing like who's just thinking about like if you want put in the chat. If you're on D7, could you just put in the chat you're going to re-platform or if you're going to redesign your site? So like if you're just thinking about re-platforming and moving from D7 to D9, or if you're thinking about a redesign as you're going, I'd be interested to know like how many people are just looking to re-platform their site because, as a follow-up question, the last one, which is with respect to views, I take it pasting the SQL query in an underlying view doesn't work.
Yeah, I don't think that would work simply because like the database structure has changed between Drupal 7 and Drupal 8, if that makes sense. So like where it needs to query from has changed. So that wouldn't work in most cases.
All right.
And you know, one thing to people in the chat that are thinking like total redesign, obviously we're already if you get in a crunch, I think say you're like 6 months out from end of life for Drupal 7. I think one thing you could do is you could stay on the vendor extended support for a time just to buy yourself you could buy yourself a little bit more time as you get migrated up to Drupal 9. So just something to consider. I would only recommend that though if you're in process of like, moving to Drupal 9. So
Okay. Awesome. I know there's one more question, but we have time for lots more questions. So I want to just if you feel like there's still some clarification, or if you want to dive into an esoteric issue specific to you, please reach out in the Q&A. For small to medium sites, wouldn't a more straightforward copy paste per page approach be more time efficient? Especially given that a new design is highly likely to mean changes in layout, content, SEO requirements. And even if the design is unchanged, how realistic is it that all fields will be easy to transfer?
Yeah, so Joe, on the super simple site, Drupal's built-in like upgrade from Drupal 7 to say Drupal 9 would probably work very well. We had at least a couple projects where if you had on those particular projects, they had a few very simple content types, very few taxonomies. They weren't using many contributed modules. And that upgrade process, saved the headache of all that copy paste, right? It moved all the content types over the Drupal 9, all the fields, and all that data. And it saved all the copy paste. And the big asterisk there is the theme, if you have a custom theme, you have to deal with that. But if you're using like an off-the-shelf Drupal theme, then you're really in good shape. If you have no technical staff and it's a small site, of course a copy paste would work.
Okay, awesome. There's a question came in. What was the name of the module/app that Joel used to test updating the custom module?
So if we're talking about Drupal 8 to Drupal 9, can you clarify that, Travis?
Okay, while Travis is providing a little clarity on that, whether you're going from Drupal 8 to Drupal 9, there's another question that came in. If someone with Drupal knowledge was planning a new site in D8 requiring small custom code, now instead, I'm sorry, I'm just having a hard time understanding this. If somebody with Drupal knowledge was planning a new site in D8 requiring a small amount of custom code, instead of creating this in D9, are there other close CMS options, latest technologies, et cetera? It seems like the question is, if there's not a lot of custom code, should we even go to D9?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I think one thing we like to do is evaluate each project for if Drupal's the right tool for the job. In some cases, the answer is no to that. We're working on a project where a client just did not have any appetite for the overhead of keeping Drupal up to date and secure. And we went with sanity.io, which is it's not open source, but it's a closed source, like API first CMS. You could of course go, depending on how simple it is, you could always go old school and just do straight flat HTML.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to pile on again, which is I'm not a Drupal, like a Drupal priest. I don't have like a Drupal altar at home. It's a great tool for building really great, robust websites. If you have a very simple site, then it might be using Drupal might be using like building sandcastles with a bulldozer. It's just like maybe too much. And WordPress or like a decoupled or static site solution might be a better solution for you. And again, it just depends on the complexity of the site and the use case that it fulfills. Going back to the, what was the name of the module/app Joel used to test updating custom module? I think it was from, the clarification was, I think it was D8 to D9, and the test he was talking about earlier to upgrade the module code automatically. So I think it was a, what's the is it a Drush or Drupal console?
No, it's the upgrade status module. So it can actually all be done through the Drupal admin. You don't have to know command line to be able to see that. And one thing I'd like to point out, Travis, is that with a lot of my Drupal 8 modules that were custom and I had to convert to Drupal 9, it's like it was as simple as adding one line to the info.yaml file. So in some cases, if you're not using any deprecated code, it's that simple.